Woohoo! Yes, indeed. Come on. Hey, it's so boring, Japanese politics. Nothing ever happens. Oh, what are we going to talk about today, man? Woo! Get it going.
Yes,
Hi, Maya.
that's the gesture. Good morning, Timothy, and good morning to everybody watching us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. This is Japan Politics One-on-One, episode 243, and this is the place where we talk about Japanese politics and the latest events during the past week. And this week has been really a very significant one in Japanese history, I would say, as well, not only LDP's history, because LDP elected its first female president, and it seems that Sanae Takaichi is set to become Japan's first female prime minister. So, contrary to everybody who says that nothing changes in Japan, Japan is set for a big change, it seems. And Timothy, today we're going to hear you talking about all these changes and, of course, the events in Japanese politics that took place last week.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. A lot has happened, Maya. Gosh, it feels like so long since we were here just this last week, just 7 days ago.
Indeed, yes, that has been a busy week in every sense of the word.
So let me get into what I'm going to talk about today and then turn it back over to you. But for those of you who are new to this show, we've been doing it for 243 sessions. That means 243 Sundays. Every Sunday, this is Maya's insistence. I don't know how she squeezed me into it, but 243 weeks, that's almost 5 years. We're approaching our 5-year mark. We're here for you every Sunday to deliver to you what's going on in Japanese politics. And since I also have a life to live, I'm pursuing my weekends on my sailing yacht, the good ship Grimm's. I'm standing on it now in the home harbor of Katsuyama. You can look at that on Google if you're that interested. It's on the inside lip of the Chiba Peninsula facing the Tokyo Bay. But we're almost always reporting from this scene because every week I'm out, I'm doing something, pursuing it. But in my daily job, I do Japanese politics, and there's a lot that's going on there, but there's a lot that's involved in that, helping foreign clients deal with their policy or their regulatory issues with the Japanese government. They don't have anybody competent enough or connected enough inside their organization to deal with the bureaucrats and with the politicians, and that's where we step in. This last week, Maya, at the Happoen was under a 1-year restoration, and it opened on Thursday, on Thursday, and the first event was this meditation competition that we were involved in. Maya, you were there too. And as part of my delivery of services, we brought Sanae Takaichi. I'm sorry, we brought Ake Abe, the wife of former assassinated Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and the former Minister of Reconstruction, Tanaka, to this event. It was a big event. It was a collection of many who's who from Tokyo. And if you're interested in that sort of thing, please make sure you reach out to Maya or myself. Link in with us on LinkedIn so that you can be involved in these issues as they come up too. But it was a great event, very, very well attended, it was in the garden in the detached part of the newly restored Happoen. And so it was just really a fantastic event, and I really congratulate the organizers all here for that. But we're coming up on a 3-day weekend. Next weekend is a 3-day weekend. Sports Day is on Monday. So there are about 20 national holidays in Japan. About 13 of them are kissed up on a weekend so that you have a 3-day weekend. So next weekend, I will be probably reporting from the port of Nijima, which is the 3rd island in the Izu island chain. So it starts with Oshima, that you can frequently see from Tokyo, and then it goes Torishima, Nijima, and then there are 4 other islands beyond there. But I've only got 3 days, so we'll make a quick break for Nijima and report from the port of Nijima, and I hope their Wi-Fi is good for us. But what a week it's been. I got to get into the real meat of it. Japan now has, more likely than not, almost certainly, a female prime minister. The election yesterday was for Sanae Takaichi. She is the president of the LDP. This is a strange time because Mr. Ishiba is no longer the president of the LDP, although he is the prime minister. That never happens. The president of the LDP is always the prime minister when the LDP has those numbers. This is the first time. So for the next 10 days, Mr. Ishiba, until he tenders his resignation, is prime minister, but somewhat in a lame duck situation. So there's a lot going on, a lot of controversy. There's so much going on that it's hard to kind of get it all together. And I try not to get into the weeds too much for those of you who are kind of struggling. You're interested in Japanese politics. You don't want to be fed with a fire hose, give it to me so that I can understand it. But there are a lot of Japan hands. I mean, this is a collection of Japan hands. So they want to know what's going on, what it means, what are the intricacies of it. And so I'll try and get to all of that. Today, October 5th, is the celebration day for the Tokyo Olympics. The Tokyo Olympics in 1964 opened on this day, 60 years ago? And Tokyo Tower, this icon of Tokyo, of life here, was built as a consequence or to prepare for the Tokyo Olympics. So it's really important to kind of understand all of these things and how they mesh together and how they deal with not just the culture and the politics, but also how Japan deals with the entire world. So this is also the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. And Tokyo Tower, one of the reasons why it's so nostalgic to people is because it was built from the remnants of the war material from the war. It was melted down and reconstructed. So the Tokyo Tower holds a really special place in the hearts of many Japanese. And I'm just mentioning that now because the Tokyo Olympics took Japan from what it used to be into where it is right now. So it was a really epical, really a huge event for Japan. And similarly, this election of Miss Sanae Takaichi is also very seminal. And also, before we go on, it took years before, Maya, you'll remember this, and I'm sure you'll laugh. It took years before anybody was pronouncing Shinzo Abe's name properly. Mr. Abe, right? A-B-E, right? Abe, pronounced Abe. So let's cut right to the chase and how you pronounce Sanae Takaichi's name too. So many people say it's Takaichi, and it's not Takaichi. It's Takaichi, Takaichi. So if you can pronounce that well when you're talking about it, talking about her, you will score points among your Japanese colleagues. So it's not Takaichi, it's Takaichi. So let's move forward with that. Anyway, congratulations to her for this win. You remember that, Maya? I hear you laughing.
Right. And yes.
Go ahead.
I do remember that. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So also you might have noticed that there was an more than just the Sanae Takaichi earthquake yesterday, but also on Friday, Tokyo it experienced 2 earthquakes very close together. I'm sure you felt it too, Maya. 4.5 on the scale hit in Chiba, around where I am right now, but it was felt really quickly, a bit of a jolt, twice in very close succession in downtown Tokyo at around noontime. Maya, did you feel that?
I did, yes, a couple of times actually.
Yeah. So there was no tsunami warning. There was no damage reported. It's only a 4.5, but it kind of reminds us of where we are in this situation, where Japan is geographically and in this ring of fire and the preparations that's going on. Mr. Tanaka, who I escorted into the meditation event in Hapoen, was the minister for reconstruction, and reconstruction is getting a lot of attention. It got a lot of attention from the Prime Minister Ishiba, because one of his pet projects was reconstruction and preparing for disaster, and also filtering out to the rest of the prefectures of Japan, the 47 prefectures of Japan, so that more people are benefiting from the economy and being restored. So this is a big deal, that when earthquakes happen, everybody is really on edge because you never know if it's going to be the big one. The big one has been predicted for a long time. But in any event, we're front and center today on Takaichi's seismic Liberal Democratic Party victory of yesterday. This is huge. You can't really overemphasize it because, I mean, gosh, Maya, you and I, 5 years ago, we would have laughed. We'd have, slapped each other on the shoulder, talking about a female prime minister for Japan. It's not a done deal, but almost 95% of the decision has been made. Whether she forms a coalition or not, she is most likely going to be the next prime minister of Japan in, 15 days? No, in about 11 days, actually. So there's a lot to shift through there. So I hope to get through my briefing today really quickly, maybe 25 minutes, so that we can get into the Q&A session, which is really where the heart of this briefing generates the most value for you, the audience. Maya, back to you.
Thank you, Timothy. Yes, and to everybody watching us, thank you for tuning in this morning. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're warm and also comfortable. Also dry as well, because Tokyo is really wet today. Also, please remember that we are here every Sunday morning, of course, and we appreciate your telling us that you have been with us by hitting like, subscribe, or follow, or yes, sharing as well these briefings if you believe that they might be informative for your colleagues, family members, friends, and acquaintances in different parts of the world, people who are interested in Japan, people who do business with Japan. So please do share these briefings with them as well. And of course, we have mentioned before that there is a newsletter. This is the synopsis of the briefing, which is sent a couple of days after the briefing is over. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you can do that on Substack. You can also let us know that you want to be added to the mailing list. This is a weekly newsletter, so there is no more emails than one per week. And so we're not going to fill your email box with emails when you're added to the list. Okay, Timothy. So it's over to you now. Let's go into the details and see what we can learn today.
Great, thank you, Maya. And in this briefing, we don't try and sell you our products or our soap or trying to promote anything. We try and give you the news. Nobody else in the world does it like we do it. Almost 5 years going on, bringing you the news weekly. So if you like it, if you benefit from it, please just let us know. We don't charge you for it, but it is the only program that really consistently comes up with what's going on in Japanese politics. So it's like Maya said, if it's of interest to you, log in and make sure you're there. You're here every Sunday. So the runoff vote yesterday was with the LDP, and it pitted. There were 5 contenders, as we all know. The 2 that were on the end, Mr. Motegi and Mr. Kobayashi, really weren't very serious contenders. It was really Mr. Hayashi, who is the chief cabinet secretary. He speaks on behalf of the prime minister on a daily basis, sometimes several times. Then there's Mr. Koizumi. He's a minister of state, and he's with the Suga faction. And then Ms. Takaichi. And so the race was really between, they had 2 sessions. The first session tried to whittle down these 5 to 2. I was hopeful that Mr. Hayashi would come in. The problem with Mr. Hayashi is that he has a full-time job as the chief cabinet secretary. He's doing things for the country, for the prime minister. He couldn't really get as engaged as I think he wanted to. Plus, as a minister of state, he's somewhat held back from being a little bit more expansive, a little bit more flamboyant, but that wasn't the case with Mr. Koizumi. So, and in any event, the press and the public really like Mr. Koizumi as a fresh face. He's young. His father was prime minister, and less people thought that Miss Takaichi, as a woman, as a ultra nationalist, she's far right, not far right, but she's basically the leader of the conservative wing of the LDP. And they didn't think that she would go. So all of the gamblers were betting on Koizumi to pull it through. But Miss Takaichi really came through. The win for her was definitive. She had 185 votes to Mr. Koizumi's 156. So that's a pretty big deal. She pulled 149 lawmaker votes in the second from, and also 36 from the party chapter. So in the final round, the rank and file members of the LDP don't vote. There's no technique for getting them to vote and be able to do that in the closed time that they have. It starts on Saturday. They do the first vote for the 5, and you select the 2 that win, because nobody's going to get 50% of the vote. If there's only 2 candidates, then you can, but with 5, that's unlikely. So it goes into the second session, maybe 40 minutes after the first session ends. So that's when the power brokers and the kingmakers really begin to scamper. And you saw a lot of that with Mr. Aso and with Mr. Suga, with Mr. Kishida, to try and get their guy in. And that happens within 30 minutes. And then the second vote came in. And, you know, the only votes that are counted then are the Diet members and the 47 prefectures. And the 47 prefectures are supposed to vote the way that they voted in the first round. They only get 1 vote, the individual prefectures. So that's 47 votes. But they must vote the way that they were supposed to vote in the first round as what their members said, unless the person who they voted for is not one of the 2. Then they have a bit of a chance. So there was a little bit of change there. Koizumi started with a little bit strong. He was announcing beforehand that he had 80 LDP members that were going to vote for him. And in the end, he kind of not quite fizzled out, but he only ended up with 143 lawmakers and 11 of the chapters, 11 of the 47 chapters, whereas Ms. Takaichi pulled in 149 lawmaker votes and 46 of the 47 prefectural chapters. So that's not quite a landslide. He did pretty well, but I think her victory is pretty evident and something that we all should look forward to and embrace. I know there are a lot of people that are somewhat hesitant that she's going to be pushing Japan more towards the right, more towards defense spending, more hands off on the fiscal brakes, and a little bit more aggressive on trade policy. But it could be a breath of fresh air. I mean, there are a lot of problems with Japan, and I think many people were just afraid that it's going to be the same old thing. And I think with Takaichi, it's a little bit of an unknown quantity because she is basically untested. She doesn't have a lot of cabinet experience, so we don't know a lot about her. But from her pronouncements and from her activities, she visits Yasukuni regularly. She's one of the only Diet members that does this boldly and says, look, I believe in Japan. I believe in the restoration of the emperor. I believe that Japan should have a strong role and should dictate its own terms, and it shouldn't be bullied. She's really very strong on fiscal responsibility, on economic policy, on security, on defense areas. So you're going to see quite a bit of a change from Ishiba. Ishiba was a little bit milder. He was a defense otaku, an expert on defense. And so you saw that there was increasing movement in the defense area. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. The Nikkei responded. So the market's closed on Friday, so you can't calibrate what the market is going to do. And it's been less than 24 hours after all. So we're all trying to figure this out. Globally, we're trying to decode this. We won't know until the markets open, until we get into Monday, but it will be really a significant shift from what we've had in the past to some sort of hawkish conservatism. I think you can expect that. So the real key now is the rocky coalition path ahead. So there's a lot going on that we're going to talk about. Who's going to be in her cabinet? Who are going to be her selections as driving the LDP. So as the president of the LDP, she gets to choose who are the 4 top leaders of the LDP, which guide things like the Secretary General. Mr. Ishiba selected his right-hand man to be his Secretary General. And this guided a lot of things, like as soon as he became Prime Minister, his Secretary General pretty much decided we should have a snap election. And as a consequence of that, the LDP lost more than their majority in the lower house. And then 6 months later, it was again the election for the upper house, and the LDP didn't do again. So the Secretary General has incredible power. She will be reporting this tomorrow on Monday. So it's a good idea for us to talk about who it is that Takaichi is. She's Abe's heir apparent. You remember that. Even though she didn't belong to the Abe faction, she was Abe's selection to become prime minister. So this is her third try. She tried it when Mr. Abe was around. She tried it the last time. She was one of the 9. And this time she won. So 3 is a charm for her. She is known as hawkish. She's known as somewhat of an expansionist. But you can kind of characterize her as neo-Abeism and Thatcher inspired. I think that's somewhat accurate. She holds Thatcher in great regard, and she wants to bring Japan back. So it's an echo from Trump's momentum. Japan, the U.S. U.S. is number 1. Back to the U.S. Bring the U.S. back to its basic philosophies, and so I think she's going to be doing the same sort of thing, and she's going to pursue strategic investment and ironclad economic security. That's one of her fortes. So we can't expect that this $550 billion U.S. investment or Japanese investment in the United States pledge is going to be under scrutiny. So she hasn't said that she's going to deny it. She just said, I'm going to look at it carefully, and if it doesn't meet with Japan's benefit, then it will have a hard time. So she's really putting her best foot forward. She had a thank you speech yesterday, an acceptance speech, and she really drove hard on work and the work ethic and how much she's going to work and how she's going to wag her finger at diplomats, at the bureaucracy, and at her fellow dietmen. We need to work. We've got so much going on. We've got defense and geopolitics. We've got China, Russia, North Korea. We've got protective tariffs that are being imposed on us. We need to stand our ground. We need to stick with this 15% cap on automobiles, no more over that. And let's build Japan up again. So help me do that. And I think, for the LDP, it needs that kind of fulcrum, that kind of spark to kind of bring people together. Not everybody's going to like her. She is not a favorite of Komeito. The LDP and Komeito have a coalition, and the LDP needs Komeito, but it's not enough, actually. Takaichi needs to bring in another coalition partner, and the Komeito might just say, forget it. We held our nose long enough with Mr. Suga, with Mr. Kishida, with Mr. Ishiba, and we retained a cabinet post as a consequence of that, but it was really hard for us. We represent peace, we represent the downtrodden, and the LDP is not quite our cup of tea, but we do it because we get a cabinet seat, we get to control one of the ministries that they've done ever since they joined the coalition. So it's a very delicate, and there's no time. In 10 days, she needs to form a coalition with somebody, announce that, and that means she will announce her LDP policy positions, which includes the Secretary General for Operations, the Policy Chief for Agenda Setting, the Chairman for Parliamentary Whips, and Policy Affairs Research Council Chief for legislative drafting. Those 4 positions will be announced tomorrow, and they will indicate to us, they're probably seats that will be going to her inner circle. These are very important seats. Some would say, well, they're on the caliber of cabinet seats, but the cabinet seats and overseeing a ministry is quite a different thing. You're dealing with a lot of money and budget and policy and making executing decisions that have been executed by the cabinet or by the prime minister or by the diet as a whole. But these 4 positions here are really attached to the prime minister, so they're critically important. How she's going to blend and calm down, Mr. Hayashi lost, Mr. Koizumi lost. Mr. Kobayashi lost. What is she going to do with them? They still have a strength within the Diet, and things could be very difficult for her. She starts making mistakes, and people will say, see, because she's a woman, because she's far right, let's go after her. Let's not cooperate. So she's going to have an awful lot to deal with there. So all eyes are on tomorrow, and she cannot pick her cabinet until she forms that coalition with whoever. And there are only 3 viable parties that she could form a coalition with. One of them is just, it's not going to work. The main opposition party it's not going to go into a grand coalition. So it's only 2 parties that have enough votes to carry the LDP, Komeito, if Komeito sticks around, over the 50% margin so that legislative drafting can continue. So if it doesn't happen, if she's not able to cobble that forward, she'll still become prime minister, but it'll just be a very, very difficult thing. And in fact, this is the first time for the Liberal Democratic Party to be confronted with this. In the past, as soon as the LDP president was announced, everybody knew he was going to be the prime minister because the LDP held the majority in both houses. This is the first time since, well, in the last 25 years, where the LDP not only doesn't have a majority in the lower house, but also in the upper house. So they lost that majority, 2 months ago in the election that happened there, which kind of triggered, not totally, but kind of triggered the resignation of the current prime minister. So the Liberal Democratic Party lost majorities in both houses, and now it needs to kind of recalibrate that, and it has to do that by bringing in a partner. And the other thing that you need to keep in mind is it might be that the Komeito decides, screw you, we're going someplace else. You've gone too far. And now you have Takaichi, who we never liked. So we're going someplace else. So that kind of, it enhances Nippon Ishin no Kai, which has 41 members, a little bit greater than the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's party. So they need to breach that 50% point. So the LDP has 191 seats with Komeito's 29 seats. That total is about 220 seats out of the grand total of 465, which is under 50%. In the upper house, the Liberal Democratic Party has 101 seats. Komeito has 25, and a coalition of 126 out of 248 is just shy of 50%. So in either event, in either house, they need to eclipse that. There are 2 ways to do that. One is to make friends with one of the coalition partners or one of the opposition parties. That seems to be a likely scenario. The second way is for the prime minister, once he has control of the Diet, he is prime minister, to close down the house. We're going to have an election. This is what Mr. Ishiba did. In a gamble that he's going to retain the majority, it didn't work. It could work this time. The calculus is not quite in. But with regard to who is going to be the favorite for Ms. Takaichi, it remains to be seen. So it lacks 13 seats to be in the majority in the lower house. If they join forces with the Democratic Party for the People, that comes in with 28 seats, but they're going to want something for that. The Democratic Party for the People, and Mr. Tamaki is a tough negotiator. If I bring my 28 seats to help you pass legislation, stuff like that, there should be something in it. You have a coalition with Komeito. It's been going on for 25 years, and you gave them the Ministry of Transportation, a really rich, a hugely rich ministry. We want something actually better than that because we're bringing more to the party. So we need that. On the other hand, the Japan Innovation Party, which is Nippon Ishin no Kai, they have 41 members. They had 43. They lost 2 because of an internal struggle that happened maybe 2 months ago. They restructured the leadership base. They had a bit of a not a revolt, but enough to fire 2 of the members because they were pro Baba, who was the former chairman of Ishin no Kai. He is still in Ishin no Kai, They've changed that. The leader is still the governor of Osaka, and then the Diet member, Mr. Fujita, was switched in as the new Diet member. So if there is an election for prime minister and Isshin no Kai is not a coalition partner, then it would be Mr. Fujita who runs as the candidate for president. Mr. Tamaki would run as president for the Democratic Party for the People. The Constitutional Democratic Party is the largest opposition party. It has 148 compared to Isshin no Kai's 41 and the DDP's 28. I mean, this is huge. They can really sway things, but they've already said, Mr. Noda has said, I'm not going to form a grand coalition with the LDP. In fact, if they select or elect Ms. Takaichi or one of the others, we're going to form a coalition. We have more numbers. We can outvote them. And mathematically, that's correct. But I think for the Democratic Party for the People and the Isshin no Kai, it's too tempting to go in with the LDP. The differences are not that huge. Cut off just a tiny bit of your nose and get a cabinet seat, or maybe even something better, 2 cabinet seats. So we need to take a look at that. And once again, Komeito is anti-Takaichi. So their pacifist roots clash with her Yasukuni Shrine visits and her hawkish defense. The Sokai Gakkai base, with the religious base, which is the foundation of Komeito, it doesn't like nationalism. It doesn't like a lot of the things that Ms. Takaichi stands for. So it's not likely. Well, it's a toss-up. We will have to wait and see who she selects as her LDP policy board, and then as we move forward, we're going to be able to see in who she selects as her cabinet if she keeps the Komeito in the position as a long-standing minister for transportation. So a lot to see. So what's going to happen over the next 10 days is on October 14th, which I believe is a Wednesday, the emperor will cross over. He lives right across the street from where the Diet is, strategically. I mean, that was created. The closest building to the Imperial Palace is the Diet. You pass right by the National Police, which also makes sense. It's a historical throwback. But he drives across, his motorcade drives back, drives up the entrance to the Diet, which incidentally was built exclusively for this purpose. This curved driveway that goes into the Diet was built exclusively for the emperor to use. There's a staircase that goes upstairs. There's a room waiting for him. 10% of the entire cost of the Diet was dedicated to those things that are only used by the emperor. And he's been in the Diet. The last time he was in the Diet was to open the parliament. So he's required to do that. He is required to accept the appointments of ambassadors, but he's not really that much engaged. But he will cross over the moat and open the Diet on October 14th. And at this point, this is where Mr. Ishiba will say, I've enjoyed my time here, but I'm going to resign. I'm going to let Japan move into the future. And I'm resigning now. And then the Diet opens up with a vote for prime minister. They do this all on the same day. So everything is going to happen in very rapid order. And on the next day, on the 15th, that's when the prime minister who is selected, and it's 90% sure it's going to be Ms. Takaichi, will announce who she's going to have as her cabinet. And you'll know all of these things. And you'll get a sense of it when the various parties field their candidate for prime minister. So typically the independent parties promote their leader as a candidate for prime minister. So even the Communist Party, even though they're small, they'll promote their leader as a contender as prime minister. They vote in two different houses. So the upper house will vote for its selection of prime minister, and the lower house will vote for its selection of prime minister. If they reach the same conclusion, then that individual is voted as prime minister. If they're different, then there is kind of a runoff. who's first, who's second, just like in the LDP elections. They choose who that person is, all in the same day once again, and within hours it happens. And then that person becomes prime minister. And then the diet or that session closes, not the entire session, the session stays open. But the next day, the prime minister will announce who its cabinet members are. And if for example, if the Democratic Party for the People does not promote their leader as a candidate for prime minister, then the works are in the deal, right? The coalition is going to be with the Democratic Party for the People. Conversely, if it's Ishin doesn't run a candidate, then that's where it's going. So I think we'll know a little bit more about that as we move forward. But the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Noda will be a candidate for prime minister. Invariably, we can anticipate that. So let's see what else we've got today. The ripples of this sort of thing happening. It kind of echoes what happened in 1964, this epochal change. Japan changed as a consequence of the Tokyo Olympics, the broadcasting. They sold lots of TVs because now with the Tokyo Tower, they could broadcast television and radio to the people. Not quite had the economic engine started, so not all of the houses had 1.5 televisions as they do now. Most households have at least 2 televisions, and now with your smartphone, you've got even more access there. But in 1964, even there just wasn't radio coverage, and the Tokyo Tower cleared that in anticipation of the Olympics. It changed everything. And I think it can be said that this selection of a female, of Miss Takaichi in particular, is a keystone. It's a turning point for Japan. I think she's going to be a hard ass. I think she's going to drive things forward. I think she has taken a page from Mr. Trump. Bore forward, keep the press, off their toes. There's a lot going on that we as consumers, we're not sure. We're being fed information. It's colored. It's incorrect. It's being published as an agenda. So a lot of that, I think, is being challenged now by leadership, not just here in Japan, not just in the United States, but in many other places. As soon as she won, the Taiwan president, Lee Chang-te, hailed her as a steadfast friend, and she received a phone call from the leader of Isshin no Kai immediately after she won. Israel also issued a statement that said, we're very happy for you. You're going to strengthen our relationship, and that's pretty significant. She's apparently a sponsor or a supporter of what's going on with Mr. Netanyahu and the peace agreements and the policy there. So there's a lot that's going on. So let's see. The yen closed out on Friday. Typically, we talk about the yen as the first thing in our briefing, but this time, I mean, what happened on Saturday is so huge that I hit that one first. But the yen closed out at 147.41 against the United States dollar on Friday, close of business. So keep your eye open for what the yen does on Monday and Tuesday. It'll be something of a barometer, but I think the Bank of Japan is still going to delay any kind of rate hikes. We have been anticipating them doing it. It's a little bit behind time, but they're the exporters of Japan, Toyota. They love the fact that the yen is at that level because they make more profits as a result of that. They sell more goods. Conversely, it's the people, it's the population, it's the workers who are suffering. Costs have continued to spike 15% over the last year in food and energy, and I think people are just kind of gasping. Inflation is still at 2.5%, 2.7%. The Bank of Japan said, we're going to bring it to 2%. They've been saying that for 2 years, 3 years. It's just so elusive. They're not getting it. And in the meantime, although people's wages are increasing, inflation is eating that up. So there's potentially a lot of public unrest about that. And I think it will be captured by the new administration. The trade deficit for August, those numbers came in. The deficit was 242 billion yen. That's half of what it was in July as a consequence of the tariffs and that sort of thing. But overall in 2025, the total, we're not even over 2025. We're in, it's October 5th today. That total is 4 trillion yen. So the importance of import reliance is really clear, that, you know, Japan is dependent on imports. It's not self-sufficient in providing even food for the entire population. It needs to import that. And when it imports it, it's at a higher cost because it's paying at a more, at a cheaper yen, and they have to pay for that. And in many instances, especially with energy, that's paid in US dollars. So they have to purchase US dollars. There was some uptick this last week, in the middle of the week, that the yen strengthened, but it came back down on Friday. But it strengthened because the US Congress closed down. The Congress has stopped in the United States. It is considered to be pretty serious, but not too fateful. But you can watch the yen, you can watch the Nikkei. It's going to reflect what's going on there. Consumer price index is 2.7%, and the wages just continue to lag. So keep your eyes on what's going on with the Nikkei. And I try not to be too much of an alarmist, but before there's any huge global conflict, gold goes through the roof, and the stock market starts to do very exasperated extensions, highs and lows. There was the Nikkei had a high 2 weeks ago, the highest in 15 years. It just surpassed all records. And this is an indication that people are looking for safe havens. They're purchasing things. The Nikkei is enjoying that, but it could be like eating Chinese food, that you're hungry after 15 minutes. So it really remains to be seen. With regard to the United States and Japan, the deal is on automobile tariffs, 15%. So it was down from 27%. These numbers are kind of plucked from the sky, but there was, you know, this tariff that was being halted. It had a hiatus of 27% before Trump took office, and it had just been pushed aside, and it was on vacation until it was implemented again. And when Trump came in, he just took those bans off and said, it was decided earlier that this is going to be the number. If you want to negotiate that, I'm open to negotiation. But the decision was already made 5 years ago about this tariff. So let's get to it. So that's kind of what started it. Honda faces a $5 billion annual hit because of their trade, and because the cars that are built here are shipped to Japan. They don't have as much manufacturing in the United States as some of their competitors. With reciprocity opening, the agricultural market opens wider for American goods to come in. So you can see some wavering going on there. Just watch the markets and see how that goes. But Takaichi has said very clearly, you know, if these tariffs are viewed as being somewhat unfair on balance to Japan, we're going to stand our ground, and we're going to contest those. So she's not coming out and thumping the president of the United States in the chest, but she is saying it's a new ball game. And also, incidentally, before this month is out, the president of the United States is going to visit Japan. So he will be visiting, and he will be meeting with the new prime minister. So how that goes, he's going to be on his way to China, I believe. This is a big deal. He'll stop in Japan. I don't know if he'll stop in South Korea. It would be a good idea if he did. But I think he's going to really make some deals and make some changes. I mean, if there was some way to resolve this issue between Taiwan and China and calm things down and prevent countries from spending so much for defensive posture, I think that would be such a great thing. But it's not a sure thing. You know, India has a tactical relationship with China. So it's been easing its visas and opening its borders. It's got a $99 billion trade deficit. And so this, and they're neighbors, right? So the trade flows between China and India, and that friendship is really somewhat worrisome. Vietnam is taking a little bit more of a more aggressive stance. The police are vetting investors in energy and telecom, and it's kind of making investments and people going to Vietnam to start companies a little bit more difficult for multinationals. So there's a lot of tension that's going on, not just there, also in the Philippines, but it's something that you've got to keep an eye on. We have talked, Maya, on this show many times about Japan going into the defense industry as the next new thing. We've done it with automobiles. We've built the best automobiles in the world. We've gotten black eyes as a consequence of it. We had to transition our manufacturing to other countries, to Europe, to the United States, to kind of diminish that tension. But it's really kind of maybe hit the end of its dream, and they're looking for the next new industry. And by the way, it's been, 40 years now since the first automobile clash between the United States and Japan. 1981, I believe it was, where the senators from the United States were bashing. They pulled Toyotas up to the Capitol Hill steps and they took turns with a sledgehammer bashing Toyotas. We can't sell GM cars in Japan, and you're selling your stuff here unfairly, and we're good. And this was the biggest, Japan and the United States had not had trade conflict until that point. That is the time that I was at law school in Sendai, and finishing law school, I was hired into the Diet to work for Upper House member Taro Nakayama. So that changed my life, but that was the thing that happened. On today, at that point in 1982, that's the time that they finally made a solution for the automobile trade, and it still continues to be something of a big bone in the caw of the United States and Japan. So Japan is looking at this defense industry as the next new thing. It does make a certain amount of sense, except for the fact that Japan's constitution has Article 9, which forbids Japan to produce offensive weaponry, to sell it, to have nuclear weapons capability, to store nuclear capabilities on the islands. And so maybe not dual use, but maybe just defensive drones, for example, or missiles, defensive missiles. Both of these things can be conceived as offensive in nature as well. But $100 billion in drones to Australia, $800 million in missiles to the Philippines in February. The Defense Ministry panel, we reported on this 2 weeks ago, urged a $50 trillion, which is about 335 billion US dollars over 5 years, for drones and exports. Mitsubishi Heavy and Kawasaki see a great horizon coming up for them. They would, and they've predicted a boost in the gross domestic product per year by about 0.3% and creating 50,000 jobs. With the demographics of Japan suffering, you kind of wonder, where are these 50,000 jobs going to be coming from? Who's going to actually be doing that work? And in the recent kind of specter of Sanseito kind of bad-mouthing foreigners, and there's so many foreigners here, and they're getting their driver's licenses illicitly, or they're buying land in Japan, and it must be the Chinese. So it's just it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a false storyline that is being generated, but it is inevitable that Japan needs to bring in more foreign workers. They need to kind of tone down that rhetoric. Takaichi is a part of that, though. I mean, one of the things that she is reflective of is what happened with Sanseito in the last upper house election. They did great, and one of their lines were, against the foreigners. The foreigners are not as good for Japan, and they're kicking or actually Takaichi is attributed as saying, they don't follow the norms. They're not following the manners of Japan. They're kind of kicking and berating the deer in Nara, where she is from. So there's a lot going on, but she's going to be hardline. She's going to have a proactive posture against China, Russia, and North Korea, undoubtedly. She's going to bolster the Quad, the Australia, United Kingdom, U.S. alliance, the Association of Southeast Asian nations, the island nations that are very much tempted by China and very wary of an arms race. So Japan is going to become a little bit more front and center. The geopolitics with Taiwan, with North Korea missiles, with the South Sea flashpoints, there's just so much going on. In Taiwan, for example, China's drills are ramping up. There were People's Liberation Army aircraft who overflew the exclusive zones, I think on 18 incidents, and including the naval vessels. They pierced the air defense identification zone just on Wednesday as well. So there's a lot of joint efforts that are going on. The Joint Sword 2024 blockades loom as the National Day. So Taiwan is having its National Day on Friday, this coming Friday. And in 2024, China had this huge demonstration. They call it a Joint Sword. And it is a kind of an alliance of China showing off and kind of threatening and having exercises right outside of Taiwan. And we anticipate that happening on Friday as well, as Taiwan celebrates its independence. But they want to, throw a wrench into that works and make sure that Taiwan knows you guys aren't, the only person that decides this. You are part of our country. You absconded. You took all of our art. You went away, and you belong to us. And we need to pressure the United States to accept that. So that's what the deal is here. North Korea also tested from a submarine an intercontinental ballistic missile. This is really scary. It just happened this last week, I think on Thursday, maybe Wednesday. So it wasn't loaded with anything nuclear, but it is a test of their capabilities. Definitely, this missile fired from a submarine could reach continental United States without a doubt. So there's a lot of tension that's going on there. Philippines and China, the conflict continues to escalate. You've got the Scarborough Shoal on just recently, the conflict there. There was a couple of injuries as the Chinese Coast Guard began to be more aggressive, firing water cannons. So it's not quite kinetic. They've had crashes with the boats and that sort of thing. But the United States has said it stands firm with Manila. Manila signed a defense agreement with Japan. They're not exchanging forces, but they're cross-training, and they're self-defense forces members who are going to the Philippines for joint training, and Philippine military individuals who are coming to Japan. So this is a big deal. It used to be that only the United States had that kind of relationship with the status of forces agreement since the end of World War II. But this is, there are a lot of countries now that have that. Britain has that, the Australia has that, the Italians. So there's a lot going on there. And these joint Russia-Chinese drills over the Sea of Japan, closer to Vladivostok. But Vladivostok is only a body of water away from Japan. It's actually pretty close. They've had joint patrols and joint drills, live fire drills, anti-submarine and rescue operations done just recently. And this is kind of, it is saber rattling that, if you guys begin to test us, and I think the signal is the finger is being pointed at the United States. If you guys continue this escalation, you have to deal with not just Russia, but with Russia and China too. And it's not just that, the Australia and the island nations are also very concerned about what's going on. Japan has participated in the Quad exercises with maybe 18 nations, 30,000 personnel from 19 nations actually participated in this joint event. So it's kind of tit for tat, and who's got the biggest one, and what are we going to do if you do that? So it's really a wake-up call. It's a lot to digest, and I hope you're capturing most of this, but it's really, I think we are on the cusp. Many observers have said we are already in World War III. You're just not hearing about it. It is being covered up. It is not really we don't want to scare the population. But if you look at the attributes of what a war looks like, or what a war coming into a war looks like, you've got all of the ingredients now. Putin has amassed forces over 300,000 troops alongside the Ukrainian borders just recently. He's stockpiling munitions in Belarus. He's positioning Iskander missiles towards the Baltics. The Baltics are suffering terribly with flyovers and drones, and the NATO's eastern flank might have, maybe 10,000 U.S. troops there stationed in Estonia and Poland with jets scrambling as Russia tests the resolve of these countries, tests the resolve of NATO, with drones, with kind of incursions. Oh, it was a mistake, that sort of thing. The United States is positioning, the president already said it, he's positioning 2 nuclear-powered submarines, which he boasts as being undefeatable, unfindable. These are the best weapons, and we are miles and miles and years ahead of Russia. You're never going to find it. I've sent 2 of these to be in an appropriate location because you guys are not playing fair, Mr. The president of Russia announced that some kind of threatening things to the United States, and the President Trump immediately made that announcement. But they're also positioning fuel tankers in the event that there is some sort of kinetic action, either in the Baltics or maybe even in the Mediterranean, potentially in our region in the Far East as well. So there's a lot going on there. The negotiations in Geneva, they stalled. Ukraine's President Zelensky is not speaking with the president of Russia. He's speaking to his counterpart, the deputy foreign minister. They haven't been able to reach any kind of an agreement. Zelensky is now insisting that you retreat, that you give us back, and we will make some concessions, but that is actually going nowhere. It's not quite like it's Ukraine versus Russia, and even more clearly these days, it's not just NATO versus Russia. More and more these days, you can see that it's the United States versus Russia. These are kinds of what's going on now, and the teetering on any kind of twitch that might ignite some sort of conflagration. It's right upon us, and it's not just Ukraine. It's not just what's going on with Belarus and the Baltic states, but this is where the world wars have started in the past, and some kind of skirmish, something can upset the things, even a mistake. And you take a look at Venezuela. So Maduro's regime has been qualified as a terrorist state by the United States maybe 2 years ago, and the United States said the leader of Venezuela is a criminal. He is the head of a crime syndicate. He is flooding the borders of the United States with drugs and cocaine laced with fentanyl, and he's the leader of we're going to put a bounty on his head. So the United States put a $50 million bounty on his head since September. Did you know this? I mean, it's outrageous. So if you call up and you say, I know where he is, and if you send the troops here, you can capture him and send me the $50 million, after he's been imprisoned. So that's what's going on there. And it's not just drugs. I think it's also about the Venezuelan oil, which China relies upon deeply. China is very much ingrained in Venezuela and the oil that's there. So there's a lot going on. Trump's strikes sank 3 boats just this last week off the coast of Venezuela, killing the people who were there, but they were drug boats. And the United States is also deploying 4,500 U.S. troops to the Caribbean. So it's like I said, it's not just the Ukraine, it's also Venezuela. Venezuela is a hotbed. 300 billion barrels a year is going to choke. It's maybe China's 20% reliance on Venezuelan oil. So escalation is triggered as anti-cartel, but I think regime change is actually the goal here. And ExxonMobil, its rigs that are off the shore have been sitting idle. And so there's a lot of corporate push for that as well, not only the diplomatic push. And finally, Israel and Hamas, the truce. Mr. Netanyahu met with the president just the other day. He said, I agree, I support Mr. Trump's 20-point Gaza plan. It was unveiled earlier, but now we're pushing forward. We want the 48 hostages to be returned by October 3rd. That's I'm sorry, I think by Sunday night, actually, Sunday night, the United States, he wants those returned. And I think of the 48 hostages that are left, maybe only 20 or so are believed to be alive. And so he's given kind of a 72-hour deadline. There are some caveats there. They're going to release 500 Palestinian prisoners from prison, and they're going to phase out the defense forces. They're going to pull back a little bit, and then they will offer amnesty for disarmed fighters and promise a $10 billion rebuild via Qatar and Egypt as this war winds down. But it's not all rosy, because Qatar is still mad that Israel bombed this residence in Doha, killing many of the Hamas leaders. And in fact, I think people understand now it's not just Hamas, it's actually Qatar that is, and some would say Saudi Arabia as well. I think Saudi Arabia has pulled back a bit, but it's Qatar that is really driving this and the conflict there. So Hamas is not going to do anything that is not approved by Qatar, and I think people have come to that realization. Similarly, with Iran, it's the Houthis. They fired 15 drones at Tel Aviv on October 2nd, which was Wednesday, from Iran, and they've got missiles that are based in Lebanon, and they've got 15,000 rockets in southern Lebanon. So any kind of twitch there, it could just really open it up, and it's like a domino. If one of these things falls, other things go into place, because the Chinese have said, if it's not resolved peacefully, if you're not giving the Gazans the food and the medicine that they need, it's going to be bad news for you. There's been some false reporting that's come out. For example, a Chinese ship, a warship, was headed towards Gaza with medicine and food, and and the Chinese were reported to be saying, if you don't allow us to come in, then all hell will break loose. That's a false report. On the other hand, there was a flotilla with Greta that was attempting to go to Gaza with medicine and food. It was stopped. A flotilla of maybe 40 boats, some of them sailboats, but some of them power boats, maybe 400 people involved here. And they were stopped outside the territorial waters, and everybody was arrested. 400 people were arrested. They were detained, and they were ejected out of Israel. The food and the medicine are now in storage. The Israelis have offered to distribute it, and the organization that is funding this has refused, said, no, we don't want you to distribute it. We want to distribute it. So it's several $1 million of goods and medical and food that's just sitting there. So it was just a show of consolidation and affinity for what's going on in Gaza. But it's disastrous what's going on there. 400,000 or 40,000 dead in Gaza. This is really something that needs to be resolved, and I think we're very close to it. But it's delicate. Hamas has agreed in principle to the demands with some caveats, but the deadline is approaching. And the president has said, if we don't have a deal by close of business, then it's going to be all hell is going to pay. And I think he's going to deliver on that. So we need to watch that. And similarly, what's going on in Europe? There's so much turmoil going on with the immigrants. So they've had an open border policy in Europe, in England, in France. The riots are now erupting all over, and even the Prime Minister of England has said, "Look, we're going to deal with this. For every one that comes in, we're going to take one out." And that hasn't quite happened. I think people have understood that he's speaking out of both parts of his mouth. There are only 4 immigrants that were deported last week, but over 25,000 people have crossed in the first half of 2025. That's enormous. And it's sparking right-wing, far-right clashes in London and also in Paris. You're watching this on the news. The news isn't quite reporting it. You can catch more of this on YouTube, which is far more accurate than what you're getting from the standard news organizations. And it's really disheartening to kind of follow that and find out what the news really is. And so I appreciate you tuning in here. I'm trying not to be alarmist, but this is actually what's going on. So France is also suffering from that. And now in the United States, when President Bush became president, he closed the borders on January 20th. The troops repelled this invasion from Mexico, but also from Canada too. But now we move into the extractions, all of these illegal aliens who are coming in. And the fight now, the reason why the Congress closed down is because the Democrats say, health care and a standard of living should be granted to all people who are in the United States, whether they're here legally or illegally. We need to be much more generous and much more sanguine about how we deal with people who have come to establish a new life in the United States. So there's a huge push here to get these guys out. There were 800 arrests in Chicago just recently. So the president focused on Washington, D.C. He put in the National Guard to quell the crime and to make some significant arrests and to get some of the illegal aliens out. That turned out to be somewhat successful. He's moved on to Chicago, then just recently to Portland, Oregon, and they say the next one is perhaps going to be Memphis. But there's a lot going on there. This is if you're looking for the ignition of a civil war, these are the hallmarks of that. That you've got the people against the government, and it's happening not just here in the United States, but all throughout Europe. And something like that can be enhanced by international configuration where the government is focused on fixing another issue, and then the eye is off the ball, and then things happen internally in cities and among people who have money and the people who don't have money, the people who are legitimately citizens and those who are illegitimately in the country. I mean, there have been mosques, there have been churches that have been firebombed. There's been a hotel that was burnt to the ground because the locals said the government is using these hotels. People are coming in by the boatload from France and from places in Europe in rubber dinghies, and the British government allows them to come in. And actually, if you say anything negative about people or about the administration, the police are knocking on your door. This is just really out of some kind of bad dream. So we're hoping that it doesn't really build into something like that, but you need to pay attention to what's going on. Watch the markets. For Qs, oil spiked at 5% to $82 per barrel, based on the Venezuela strikes on Thursday. The Nikkei has been wavering a bit, and you just need to watch what's going on with that. We will report to you in likewise fashion every Sunday with what's going on there. Once again, I try, and I apologize if I seem to be somewhat alarmist, but these are worrying points. It's not just Japan, it's Japanese politics, but it's also Japanese geopolitics and their participation in that. They have been absent over the last, not throughout the entire Ishiba administration, but he hasn't been that active, even though he's got a strong foreign minister. But without the leadership of the prime minister, globally, your shadow is very, very weak, and Japan's shadow has been very weak. I think with the inclusion of the new prime minister, they need to bolster that. They need to go forward. So who's going to be the next foreign minister is a big deal. I don't know who it's going to be. I would have liked maybe Mr. Hayashi, but there's a lot of horse trading that goes on there, so it's something to watch. I apologize for going a little bit long today, Maya, but there's been an awful lot to cover here. So I'd like to wrap it up here and go into our Q&A period and see what kind of heat and light we can generate.
Right. Okay, let me go directly into the questions. We've got quite a few of them. So the first ones, of course, they come from Byron this morning. We have one question from Diana left from last week, but I'll keep it for a little bit later because it's about the expo. So since, the election of Takaichi-san has been the topic, the hot topic, then we are going straight into that. So first, who were the key campaign managers of Miss Takaichi's successful campaign? Who are part of her core team and therefore who might be in her cabinet? Is the first
Exactly.
question.
Okay, so that's a good question. You can kind of tell who is on the inside with her, because in the first place, for her to become a cabinet, to be a candidate for prime minister, she has to have 20 endorsements. So who are the first 20 that endorsed her? And then once she became a candidate, a verified candidate, then she begins to form this cadre of people who will vote for her. The same thing happened with Mr. Koizumi. He had his 20, he selected the chief people who will help him define his campaign, will execute that. A lot of people whose names we know, they faltered a little bit. I think Mr. Koizumi can be criticized for running a lackluster and a mistake-prone campaign. Ms. Takaichi did not. Former finance minister and Abe Lieutenant Kazunobu Kato was critical for her becoming president of the LDP. That's unmistakable. But she's got deputy managers for her campaign, Mr. Shindo and Mr. Nishimura. Both of these people were very key individuals in the Abe faction. So although the Abe faction suffered greatly because of the money scandal and it was disbanded as a faction, she was the pick by Mr. Abe to become his replacement, or the replacement prime minister, the first time around. She didn't even belong to the Abe faction. So she has gone back to the Abe faction, has her strength and her stronghold. And these three individuals will be very key. Probably, it's hard to say right now, probably within the LDP, the four policy positions within the LDP, but it could also be, everybody wants to be finance minister. That's where all the money is. But also second on the pecking order is chief cabinet secretary, which is also a springboard to become prime minister, but also foreign minister as well. So let's wait and see on that. So I hope that responds, Byron, somewhat to your question.
Okay, number two. Does Ishin have a fundamental reason to cooperate with Ms. Takaichi, since they both come from the same Western Japan region?
Yes, distinctly. Ishin no Kai is based in Osaka. It's got all of the seats in Osaka. Nobody else is there. It's kicked out Komeito. Komeito used to have some seats there. The LDP used to have some seats. Ishin no Kai has taken all of the seats in that region, and she's from an adjacent region. But yes, there is a lot of affinity there. She's from Nara. It's not quite Osaka, but it's within Ishin's power base, and there's regional synergy there. Ishin dominates in Osaka and Kansai. It's got 41 lower house seats, which means 41 lower house votes that they could have given. I don't know if they did to get her into, or they will vote for her to get into the prime ministership. But yes, there's a lot of affinity there. There's an ideological fit. They're both kind of shared hawkish reformists, somewhat anti-immigration. They both talk about immigration, fiscal conservatism, anti-bureaucracy. And Ishin has a somewhat of a moderate conservatism, but it complements Ms. Takaichi's neo-Abeism. So I think, and the first phone call that she received after winning was from Yoshimura, who is the leader of Ishin no Kai. And so there is some great affinity there. And in any event, the LDP needs somebody like Ishin. They've got 41 members of the Diet that could help her become prime minister, and also it could help the coalition to succeed at enabling legislation. So they need that. The LDP hasn't had that for the last year, the entire time that Mr. Ishiba has been prime minister. So it's time for a change. It's time for a game up. So I hope that is responsive, Byron.
Yes, thank you. And then the next one. Is there any prospect for Komeito to be dislodged from leadership of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism. Why is it that they endlessly control that ministry?
Okay, well, that's somewhat more of an easy question. They control that ministry because in order to become a coalition partner, even though their seats now are not what they were when they first started this coalition 25 years ago, Soka Gakkai, which is the Buddhist lay organization, which is the founder of Komeito, they have an infrastructure and a voting machine that typically generates, if you belong to Soka Gakkai, if you belong to Komeito, they almost always vote as a block. That's 8 million votes. And so for the last 26 years, they have brought those votes into Jiminto, into the LDP, to kind of push legislation through to make sure that the LDP had control of the prime ministership. And what you get out of that is you get Ministry of Land, Information and Transportation. You got that. You got a lock on it. And that's a huge, what is it? I think it's a 1.4 trillion budget for the Ministry of Land and Transportation. And so it allows you as a minister to kind of dole out where the contracts are going. You're going to be assigning those to Komeito favorites. It's not quite scandalous, but it's the way things are done. So having these 29 lower house seats really secures the deal. It gives the LDP coalition leverage, but yeah, it's not a guarantee. Komeito has visibly and verbally said Takaichi is not our person. She's too hawkish. We are more pacifist. We, the fact that she's visiting Yasukuni, proudly, it really rubs against us. And it is possible that they could balk at the flavor of her administration and depart. So what Ms. Takaichi needs to do is she needs to keep them close enough so that they don't. But if she, as a stopgap, whoever she chooses needs to come up with the 29 votes that they would take away with them, plus the 13 that they require in the lower house. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party for the People doesn't satisfy that requirement, but Isshin no Kai does. And it might be that Isshin no Kai switches out and they get the Ministry of Land, Transportation, and Infrastructure. Yeah, I kind of don't think so. I think it's wiser for Komeito to stick to it for a little bit longer. And that means that in order to get a coalition partner, Isshin no Kai or the Democratic Party of the People, it needs to be at least a cabinet seat. We don't know which one. But when you get it one time, strategically, it would be good to kind of shift it every year so they don't become so ensconced in that one ministry. That's not what's happened with Komeito. And I read what you're getting at here, Byron. But they have been able to be there for 29 years. That's a long time. And so they have this revenue feed. I think it's probably not the right word for it, but they own the Ministry of Transportation. So as a result of that, Komeito becomes stronger. People who belong to Komeito, they're more likely to get these contracts for land infrastructure, for Shinkansen, for the Osaka Expo, for that sort of thing. So that is, I hope, the explanation that hits most of the high points of your question. But yeah, it is unlikely that Komeito will bolt, but it is highly likely that another coalition partner will come in. And Isshin and Komeito are arch enemies. So Komeito might say, we know you're in a bind, and we know that the Democratic Party of the People doesn't quite satisfy it. We'll stick with you, but don't tie up with those Isshin no Kai. They kicked us out of Osaka. They have diminished us greatly. We don't like them. We don't like what they stand for. So if you do that, that's crossing the Rubicon as far as we're concerned, and we will leave your coalition and become a little bit more buddy-buddy with Mr. Noda and the Democratic Party for the People. I'm sorry, for the Constitutional Democratic Party.
Right. Okay, thank you for this. And moving on to the next one. YouTube viewer with the handle name Tunes asked the question, will Dan Harada faint if Takaichi-san becomes Prime Minister? And will she be able to innovate in the role? I guess that we need, to ask Dan Harada that, the first question.
So for those of you that are listening from Tokyo, Dan Harada has a breakfast briefing the first Thursday of every month. If you're interested in getting a direct injection of feed into the veins of what's going on within the LDP, he is a naturalized Frenchman. He is a Japanese citizen. He belongs to the LDP, and he hosts a breakfast briefing every Thursday. I've been going for 30 years. I've been a member of his breakfast briefing since the inception when he first started it. But if you're interested in Japanese politics and you don't have that much time to catch up to it, join Dan Harada's breakfast briefing. Dan is not, I don't know, I haven't talked with him until since his breakfast briefing on Thursday, which, by the way, was oversubscribed. The room holds 60 people. There were 70 people that showed up. But it's a must attend if you're interested in Japanese politics, as is this briefing. And once again, I appreciate you joining us. But I don't know if Dan will faint. I don't think he and I did have a conversation. It cannot be Koizumi. If it's Koizumi, it's just as good as his cadre is and his backbone and who's going to be in the background. And his father was prime minister. It does have a good chance of surviving. But for Japan, Koizumi is not going to be the best pick for prime minister. I like Hayashi. Dan Harada liked Hayashi. In fact, Dan revealed that he voted for Hayashi as an LDP member. But I think we also acknowledge that there was just not enough momentum. There was not enough speed generated by Hayashi. I think he's clearly the better candidate for prime minister, but I think the other contenders had more ability to play the field than Mr. Hayashi did. He was busy being a soldier and being chief cabinet secretary and being on TV and briefing the public, 2 or 3 times a day. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think, therefore, yes, it's not going to be Kobayashi. It's not going to be Motegi. The toss-up is between those 3 candidates, and of those 3, yeah, you've got to accept the fact that it is Miss Sanae Takaichi, and I don't think Dan is pulling his hair out about it.
Right. Okay, moving on to the next question. This is from Greg. So he says, good morning, and thank you for the question, Greg. What is the potential impact of a Takaichi premiership vis-a-vis foreigner policy? She seems to be quite prone to play up foreigner crime statistics and anti-foreign workers.
Yeah, I think it's, thanks, Greg. I think it's kind of flavor of the day. I think it resounds with a certain component of the Japanese population, but I think it'll die down. I think realistically, people understand that foreign inclusion, foreign participation in the Japanese economy is required. It is unavoidable. We wish that they spoke Japanese. We wish that they knew that you're not supposed to kick the deers in Nara. We wish that they didn't leave their trash outside the 7-Eleven. We wish that they didn't have so many tattoos because it just grates us. But it's the Japanese economy. It's now the number 4 economy of the world. This time, 2 years ago, it was number 2, then 3, now 4, and it's going to be number 7 within the next 2 years. And that is tied to GDP. So GDP is tied to population. So the more people that you have and the higher the education and the more productivity that they have, and Japan has all of those things, the GDP will be stronger. But there are other competitors now too, and the population is declining. So even though productivity might stay the same, or even with enhancements with AI and technology improvements, still with that number of people declining, the GDP is inevitably going to fall. It's going to be number 7 globally within a very short period of time. And that will dictate a lot of what Ms. Takaichi is going to be doing with her administration. You can expect a lot going on there with economic security, with defense production, with projecting what Japan's role is in the Asia Pacific region, but also geopolitically too. She likes the coalition partners with the United States, with Italy, with Britain on the advanced jet fighters, with Australia, with the core group here. She wants to be part of Five Eyes. Obviously, she's something of a defense hawk. So you're going to see a lot of things. Even with Mr. Suga and Mr. Ishiba, you didn't see a whole lot of fire and flame in the belly. There was not a lot of passion there. She said in her acceptance speech, work, work, work. I'm going to work. I'm going to work my tail off. And you people, you bureaucrats and my fellow Diet members and the diplomats, let's work. Let's focus on that. Let's deal with these issues. So I think you're going to see a real step change in the administration. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, and so moving once again, since we're talking about Ms. Takaichi, Fred says, or Rick says, I think that Takaichi Daihyo is looking to move the LDP into that cultural conservative space that someone here, maybe Byron Johnston, pointed out a few weeks ago. This would be as a check on the insurgent Orange Party of Sanseito, which moved into the space. And Rick continues, my key concern is these sudden changes about visa issuances and renewals. I have been researching if Sanae Takaichi has made any statements. Would we be heading for a son no joy policy? Son no joy policy, for those who don't know, means expulsion of foreigners. Or maybe Sanae Joy, which is, the same, similar with her name, okay? Takaichi as prime minister and get rid of foreigners.
No.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that she's going to get rid of foreigners because the government of Japan recognizes, and it has been at least a couple consecutive governments, they have recognized the need to import foreign labor. And this is the reality which they cannot ignore. The population is also aware of that, but there is a very delicate point there because the population is very sensitive when it comes to immigration and the word immigration. So there is a play of words there, of course, between the government and the policies, how they are worded, and how people actually are accepted, foreign workers are accepted, but I don't see any expulsion of foreign workers in the near future.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think I haven't. So there is some latent anger about the foreigners who are coming in. So there's two distinct groups. There's the tourists that come in, and then there's the people who come in and they work. And so people who come in and work, there are lots of different variations among the nationalities, and you can be critical of some of them for things that they get into or different proclivities that they might have. But there are some that are really great. They do construction. They're prominent in different fields of endeavor that are required because the Japanese kids don't want to do it. It's dirty. It's dangerous. It's the kind of work that doesn't have any good career prospects. But these people are looking for work. They're looking for a different way of life. The tourists, I think there's a little bit of kind of spillover effect to the foreigners who live here, and a lot of that is, for example, the driver's license and the guy that's driving down the wrong side of the road on the highway, and some of the accidents that occur, and people getting their driver's licenses with relative ease, and the tuning up that they've gone through recently with the business investor license is actually coming up to par with some of the other G20 countries as well. So I think previously you could come to Japan relatively easily, relatively inexpensively, set up a company, have a KK, have that company sponsor your visa, and begin to sell your product or your services here. And even if you're not successful, you've got a visa for a couple of years until you decide that it's not going to work out here and you go someplace else. A lot of digital nomads are like that. And they also have a visa that's a little bit more short term, where you can you can you're not quite a tourist, which has a 90-day term for most countries, a 90-day term, renewable once. So that comes out to 6 months. You have to leave the country and then reapply. But I think you're going to see a change in that, because the tone needs to change as well. And it's not the foreigners that are committing all the crime, and it's not always the Chinese who are the bad people that are, getting the benefit and stealing things and, buying land next to water and sensitive areas. It just happens that for that visa category, the Chinese seem to dominate by coming over and bringing money and participating in the Japanese economy, because they're either trying to escape or they're trying to secure their money in a different country. And Japan invariably is a safe haven. It's a safe place to invest. That's why the yen dollar fluctuates, and we watch it very carefully, because when the U.S. dollar is down, the Japanese yen is strong, and so there's that very delicate balance that's going on there. I hope that's somewhat responsive.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that Kei Zhao-san, he has a point here, saying that I think Sanae Takaichi will be tough on illegal immigrants. Japan needs productive immigrants, and I also think she will pursue the spy Boshiho, which is the foreign spies prevention legislation. Yes, thank you very much for this input, Kei-san. Yes, and moving on, yes. Okay, so Kei Zhao-san says also, I also anticipate that naturalized foreign-born politicians under Japanese names will also be subject to intense scrutiny. Yes,
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I anticipate that as well. And moving on to the next comment by Hiroko-san, she writes, I wonder how Prime Minister... Okay, I apologize for it. I wonder how Mr. Trump would respond to the first woman ever to hold the position of leader of LDP and most likely to be Prime Minister of Japan.
Oh, that's a good question. President Trump is known to love women, so that should be an easy gimme. But I think he is an astute politician. And I think he's going to give her wide berth and give her latitude to exercise what it is that she wants. Having a strong prime minister is not in the United States' disfavor. Having a government that operates, that can project itself, that can have an economy that's strong, and it doesn't upset the United States that Japan wants to develop the defense industry. That helps the United States, because the United States wants to disengage. It wants Japan to be a standalone country and help export defense material and not just rely on the United States for this, and also be the front end of the United States umbrella for protection. Up to now, it's the United States that's creating this umbrella and bringing in all of the allies and bringing in the like-minded countries, and let's coalesce our forces just in case the Chinese get this idea that they're going to move on Taiwan. Let's make it clear to them that that's not going to be an easy or painless exercise for you. So that's what all of this is about. And for Japan to be a little bit more strong and a little bit more robust in the military field is a good thing for the United States. I think it might be a little bit tough, but toughness doesn't deflect President Trump. Having Japan as a strong participant, not just economically and defensive-wise, but also in this grand scheme of geopolitics that it's been clearly absent from for the last. I don't want to sound too negative or pejorative, but it just hasn't been that robust over the last 2 years.
Right. Okay, Deborah, thank you for your comment. And Deborah says, sad that you suggest that Ms. Takaichi is similar to President Trump. Deborah, your comment, I'm sorry that, well, Timothy means that they have similar policies when it comes to immigration. Probably we can expect something, similar to Takaichi-san, not in terms of what you wrote in your comment. So please make that distinction. All right.
Yeah, and America first, Trump is about America first.
Yeah,
Takaichi is about Japan first. So along those themes, you can extract a lot.
indeed. Okay, and moving to the next comment that came in chronological order. So Minerva on YouTube says, do you think that Ms. Takaichi would coalition with Sanseito and push further to the right?
Sure, it is possible. Right now, the kind of Sanseito is going shucks because they were representing the far right, and people who were aspiring or wishing Japan leaned a little bit more that way. Now the wind is out of their sails because she's coming in and she's going to be grabbing that. So she might be able. Sanseito was successful because the LDP was so lukewarm in projecting itself and being kind of mealy mouthed about some of the issues like foreigners, and not expressing itself. And so it attracted that kind of cadre of voters and people. And now with Takaichi, not only is it very much like the stance that they have, but also they are the government in power. They're not some fringe, small party that just was established a couple of years ago and has just a few members. Now, what they represented that attracted me as an independent voter, now we've got even better articulation, but also the power to do something about it. So I was with Sanseito. I'm going to shift over and vote for the LDP. That part right there is the attraction for having an election as soon as the Diet concludes who the prime minister is going to be. So you can't discount that that's going to happen, but it could. And if the Jiminto had confidence that if it has an election, more people are going to vote for Jiminto because now it's Sanae Takaichi. It's not these old guys. It's a new day for Japanese politics. Let's go back to the LDP. If they had confidence that that's going to happen, they don't need to form a coalition with the Democratic Party for the People or Isshin no Kai. They will go it there alone. And that was the gamble for Mr. Ishiba. He lost it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And moving to a question we've got from Cam. He says, is there any chance either Ishiba or Takaichi dissolves the lower house this week?
Yeah, it's a good observation. It is technically possible. I don't think it's likely. Takaichi cannot. She doesn't have the power to do that. Only the prime minister does. The prime minister has unilateral power to dissolve the lower house. He's got 10 days to do it. I think it would throw a wrench too much. I can't see it happening. After she becomes prime minister, there is a possibility that happens. We're not going to know that. Stay tuned, Cam. This time next week, we'll have a little bit better feel for that as the details of her administration begin to flow out.
Okay, and another question from Cam. Will Japan's new prime minister be ready to meet Trump when he visits at the end of the month?
Absolutely.
Do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think the expectations will be from both sides?
So I think the expectations are not that high. You just need to be first. You need to be collegial. You need to shower him with affection and accolades. We all know that from other people's interactions with the prime minister. I'm sorry, with the president of the United States. Mr. Abe really scored a hit by being the first leader to go to Trump when he was announced as going to be the president of the United States. That made a big deal. I mean, I don't think it's because of Mr. Abe's vivacious personality and his appeal, because it's not, or it wasn't. But the fact that you know how to play to the audience is really important, and it's not too much about the policy. It's about personality. It's about affinity. It's about joint goals, and I think Takaichi will score highly with that. And it's a cool thing. I mean, it will be totally global news that Trump meets with the new prime minister of Japan, who happens to be a woman, and we have photos here and a state dinner, a lot of pomp and circumstance, inevitably a visit to the emperor. It's going to be a big deal, even though it might just be crammed into 1 or 2 days. But I think it'll be a big deal, and I think she will get a lot of mileage. whoever the prime minister was going to be, even if it was going to be Koizumi, which I had lots of reservations about him facing up with Trump. But whoever it's going to be is going to get a lot of mileage out of meeting with this global leader on his way to an international conference and potentially to a meeting with the leader of the Chinese nation as well.
Right. Okay. And Cam has made a correction that Mr. Trump is not going to China, but he is meeting Xi in Malaysia and then going to South Korea and then to Tokyo. Okay. Thank you for that, Cam. All right.
Thank you for that. An invitation has been extended and accepted. So both of them said, yes, I'd like to visit your country. I'd like to come by. First on the agenda would be Trump going to China. That's a huge deal. And yes, I also think it would be really, it's too enormous to happen so quickly. But yes, meeting on the sidelines is also a pretty big deal and something to look forward to.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And Diana, well, today's question from Diana is, you have spoken about health care and well-being. Could this be a possibility for future or the future next big thing in Japan's economic growth?
Oh, that's a great observation. So the fact that the enormous number of the population who is 65 years and older, they've got this. It used to be the triangle where the old people have the few numbers and then it goes down, and the younger people are the greatest numbers. It's flipped upside down. So the largest number of people over 65, they dominate the character of the Japanese population. And as they get older, technology and healthcare and that sort of thing are advancing in lightning speed, and they're carving out technologies that can be exported to other countries who are coming up with that too. So Korea has a similar situation, but it's more related to their birth rate. So they are not replenishing their population. They haven't been replenishing their population for about 12 years. This last year, they're beginning to tick up a little bit, so they've been picking it up. But I think it's some of the other countries, the wealthier countries, are the ones that the number of people being born has traditionally been much smaller, and so they're top heavy with people who are going to be needing health care and medicine and hospital stays and that sort of thing. And a lot of the technology that is being developed, we have clients in that space that are producing diagnostics and gene technology and also devices to deal with the health and healthcare of the people. And this meditation competition that we did this last week in Hapuen was also very much geared towards, self-medication, self-renewal. You don't need to have medicine in order to do that. So a lot of the medical infirmities are generated because the mind and the spirit is sick, and you can repair that. They've done studies on that you can self-medicate, you can self-improve. But this science of meditation is completely brand new, emerging technology. But it's a great observation, Diane. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, the question and the answer. And moving on, Dr. Joe Hug has a question. Is there a chance that the LDP somehow does not fully support Ms. Takaichi?
No, we already anticipate that. There are people who, so even for Mr. Hayashi, he's kind of middle of the road. He's very much long-term, very soft on China. And there is that arm of the LDP. The LDP is a very big tent, and she's occupying the right-hand side of it. She is the leader of the right-hand side, but there's a lot of people on the left-hand side too. They don't like that she won. You've got maybe even, Konotaro and Koizumi. Mr. Konotaro was a candidate for prime minister the last time, not this time. He voted with Mr. Koizumi. I'm going to support you, and if you win, you'll have a nice spot for me, won't you, friend? And so there are people that came out short, and what are they going to get for it? So we need to look at how Takaichi distributes these cabinet posts to kind of mollify those people. And then they're not really completely with her. So she has to watch them. She has to make sure that they're doing the right things and they're not developing, nefarious plans while she's going forward, just waiting for that time when she starts to get criticized. And that will happen. She's a woman. A lot of people don't want a woman as prime minister, or they think, gosh, she's a woman. How can we continue to project this? It's not a part of our society or our culture. We need to change this as soon as possible. There are voices like that. Not everybody in the LDP is going to fall in love with her. So the key for her is to get as many, she's the president of the LDP, so she can distribute committee chairs. She can distribute, obviously, cabinet posts, vice cabinet posts, committee positions within the Diet. So there's a lot of benefits that she can have, that she can distribute. So when you watch that and you watch how that is done, it is to mollify some of those people that you're talking about, Joe, that don't like her, that don't want her to be successful. And you've got this party position, or you've got this committee assignment. So mind your manners. And if something goes awry, you're going to hear from somebody in her inner circle that she's displeased with you, and you don't want to be in the newspaper about having been ejected from your position because you haven't been a good soldier. So I think there will be little of that. I mean, she is hard-nosed, work. Let's get to work on this. I think that will generate a lot of admiration, and I think she'll have a wide runway to initiate that. President Trump had a pretty wide runway too. I mean, he was on fire for the first 6 months, changed a lot of different things and attacked things. But I think people give you a little bit of a runway as a new leader, and I think they'll give that to Sanae Takaichi as well.
Right. And well, Manabe-san, thank you very much for your comment about the foreign minister, that he will be a key figure in the new government. And also, Keizawa-san says, although a more assertive stance from Japan might worry some Asian countries, I argue that this lack of apologetic demeanor will actually prevent China and South Korea from hardening their positions. Instead, relations can be normalized precisely because Japan will no longer be perceived as a nation willing to simply concede. Well, I think we're about to see what happens there.
Yeah, I think a lot of observers, a lot of Japan hands, a lot of people that continually join us are of the same mind, Kay. It's about time. It's been a long time. The Constitution was drafted by the United States. It has remained unchanged. It doesn't perfectly reflect the Japanese culture and tradition and history, but let's go with it. I mean, we lost the war. Let's get back on track. Let's reform. And a lot of people would say it's about time. We need to up our game. And I think a lot of people are just waiting for that to happen. The Japanese should take control of their destiny, and a lot of it has been dictated by their relationship with the United States. That's undeniable. So a lot of people, I mean, we're all pulling for Japan. We want Japan to be a great nation. It already is a great nation, but it's got some challenges, and time has tested some of the underpinnings of the economy, of diplomacy, of its role, and also this controversy, potential conflict in Taiwan really puts it at the center stage. And we've already known for the last 20 years that the center of gravity has shifted from Europe to the Asia Pacific. And if you're talking about the Asia Pacific, you're invariably talking about Japan and Japan's role there. So yeah, we could go on and on about that, but I'm with you on that, Kay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And one more question. This is Diana's question of last week. It's about the expo. So
Okay.
as Osaka Expo is coming close to the last day, so what are the benefits and outcomes for Japan?
Okay. So last week, I think I made a mistake when I talked about the number of people going to the expo on a daily basis. And I caught it when I was going through the synopsis. And I mentioned to everybody, that 20,000 people a day are now being registered as visiting the expo. I misspoke. I left out 200,000 people a day. So
Wow.
we're in the last month. This is the 6th month of the expo. they have eclipsed the previous expo in terms of visitors, and the amount of money that's generated in the region where the expo is held, and this is time it's in Osaka, 200,000 people. So a lot of the people are people from Osaka. They're there, they're going on a school trip, they've heard about the expo. There are some people from Tokyo. There are a lot of foreign visitors that come too. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a World's Fair. It's a World Expo. It's called the Expo in Osaka 2025, but they are exceeding 200,000 people a day. And those numbers are now beginning to increase because people who wanted to go but hadn't are now, they have to go because it's going to end within the next 3 weeks. And the amount of injection that this has into the region is so tremendous. People are staying at hotels, they're eating food, they're taking advantage of the government services and also the commercial aspects of being in Osaka. Osaka is such a fantastic city with the food and the people and the comedy and all sorts of things. So the expo contribution over 6 months has generated a revenue equal to 0.3% of the economy, of the GDP. It has contributed that this 6 month period. So that's pretty huge. You think it might be a little bit small, but it's just one event. It's a reclamation of a property. They're building long-term standing pavilions and short-term standing pavilions, and they're making it into a hotel complex, a gambling casino, marriage hall, that sort of thing. So they're going to be upping that. So the long-term effects are really tremendous too. So yes, I think to respond to the question, it has huge benefit, and also it's kind of put Ishin into a little bit of a different category. The expo has been successful. It could have been better. They could have gotten a little bit more endorsement from the government, from Mr. Ishiba, having a more of a dramatic visit there. The president of the United States or his vice president could have visited. That could have been arranged. It didn't quite materialize, but it's not too poor, and the Japanese economy benefited hugely as a consequence of that. So I hope that's responsive, Diana.
Yeah, thank you for this. And Timothy, well, I think that we have finished the questions, at least the ones that I get here on the platform. If there are any other questions coming later, we'll answer them next week after the end of the briefing on Sunday. So to everybody who tuned in, thank you so very much for being with us, for listening, for sharing your thoughts, questions, comments, impressions. We appreciate this. Once again, if you haven't done this yet, please hit like, subscribe if you haven't yet, or follow if you are on LinkedIn, and also share these briefings and with your colleagues and family members who might benefit from them, also friends and acquaintances. Okay, so Timothy, thank you very much for the the detailed explanations and for the answers you were so keen on providing. It's very much appreciated. And again, we'll be here next week at 8:20 Sunday morning, Japan time. So if your schedule allows, please join us again and let's continue the story.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you for hosting this.
Thank you. See you next time.
See you from Nijima next time.